What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today I wanted to showcase some of the newly released KYUREM Black in the Master League. This Pokemon, I think, was something that a lot of people were looking forward to, but in my opinion, KYUREM White is just better. Shadow Claw as a fast move gives you a lot of energy generation, but you don't have that consistent fast move pressure, and if your moves get shielded up, this Pokemon feels pretty clunky. With that said, let's get into the battles, and we can see for yourself if you think this Pokemon is worth building. Alright, let's get into game number one. Shadow Rhyperior as our lead up against an Enamorus. And, I mean, you take a look at that lead, you take a look at our team. I don't have a single answer to this Pokemon. I safe swap here with our KYUREM Black, and honestly, I should have been thinking in team building, yeah, I'm just really weak to a Fairy type with a Grass type fast or charge move, right? That could be pretty bad for us to see. In comes a Fusion Bolt, though we do draw a shield, and at this point, I'm just hoping that I can sweep with a Rhyperior in the backline. If I can get a shield advantage in some way, maybe I can win this game. We end up shielding a Spatial Rend, which is pretty good for us, right? We do still reach this free shock, which should either draw a shield or knock them out. Honestly, I need a shield. I do not need switch at all. Our opponent, though, not knowing that, ends up shielding a second time here, and in comes our Palkia. So at this point, maybe there's a chance for us, right? As long as the final Pokemon is going to be a pick that our Shadow Rhyperior can kind of whittle down and maybe just one-shot that Enamorus with a Rock Wrecker, maybe there's still a chance for us right now. In the back, going to be a Rhyperior, but I get a 2-turn lag on swap-in, meaning that I don't get to deny them a Mud Slap here, which is fantastic news for us. I'm going to try our best to go for a Breaking Swipe against them, chip them down. If I can Mud Slap this all the way down, Mud Slap down that Palkia as well, and then Rock Wrecker the Enamorus, there's a chance we can come back this game. So not getting a lot of use out of our KYUREM Black this game, but it did give us a shield advantage, which is setting up our Shadow Rhyperior to potentially win this endgame. In comes Palkia. These Dragon Breaths are adding up a 1 HP knockout here. In comes a Rock Wrecker. This should knock out this Enamorus, and somehow we just beat the Pokemon that we are triple weak to here. Rock Wrecker gets a nice clean one-shot against that flying type Pokemon. GG's to our opponent. All right, next matchup, going to see a Necrozma in the lead. Fantastic lead matchup. Honestly, a lot of our team has play against this, right? In comes a Palkia. Has a safe swap of Pokemon, which we do have the ability to chip and dip here with this Breaking Swipe. If they shield this up, they're going to be down shields. If they no shield, they're going to be in Dragon Breath farm down range. In comes a Breaking Swipe, and unfortunately for us, they do end up reaching a charge move here. I know this is a Spatial Rend, so shield it up, get the full farm down, and use our energy against Necrozma when it comes back in. I don't normally like going down shields here, because I know that our KYUREM in the back is not very useful when shields are down. I want to have the shield advantage myself, and I have to imagine, we haven't seen it just yet, but there's almost always going to be a KYUREM on every single team you're going to face. So that is what I'm expecting in the backline. Aqua Tail coming through, our opponent does let it go. The next Aqua Tail, though, going to be reached very soon after. They might want to shield this up if they don't want to rely fully on their final Pokemon. In comes the Aqua Tail. We do draw that shield, and now this Necrozma here is going to overfarm just a little bit more energy. I'm hoping right now this is an outrage. They're going to have to drain a lot of energy, but if they are on Dark Pulse, which it looks like they are, they can get a nice farm down here. I don't want to give them that farm down. In comes our Rhyperior, and unfortunately for me, they are using the better version of KYUREM. If they had Shadow Claw on their KYUREM Black, this would be a much better matchup for Rhyperior, but Ice Fang on KYUREM White is doing catastrophic damage. They get a huge farm down, and this is a very scary matchup now. You know, they have a lot of energy on Necrozma, and I know they basically one-shot us with a charge move here, so the way I win this game is going to be by reaching a charge move against this, while also having a charge move that can knock out their Necrozma in the backline. We end up getting a defense drop from their charge move there. That's not great to see, but at this point, it doesn't really matter. No matter what, we get one-shot by a charge move from Necrozma. Fusion Bolt doesn't even knock them out. I try to overfarm a bit, but they go for a nice combo play. I can't quite get the catch in, and they're going to knock us out here with a Dark Pulse. Unfortunately, down goes our KYUREM. In comes Palkia. We get Shadow Claw down, not able to win the game that time. Next matchup here, a Shadow Rhyperior up against a KYUREM. Once again, this KYUREM is one of the more scary Pokemon for Rhyperior to see. Super effective Ice Fang damage adds up so quickly. Our opponent ends up counter-swapping, though, with our Palkia into a Necrozma. This isn't that bad for us, though. Up as much energy as they gave us here, and especially with the ability to spam out these Aqua Tails and maybe shield outrages, Palkia can flip this matchup. With that said, we don't really need to flip this as much as I wouldn't just mind getting shields down, because if shields are down, it's not like Ice Fangs are going to add up too much in the Zero Shield matchup against our Shadow Rhyperior, and I can one-shot that KYUREM with a Rock Wrecker. In comes another Aqua Tail. Our opponent might shield this up. They might let this go. Let's see what they want to do. Do they go for shield or switch advantage? They want to keep switch if possible. I go for a CMP with this Aqua Tail. Do they shield up this second Aqua Tail now, or will they let this go? Aqua Tail coming through, our opponent opts to give us switch advantage, which is actually pretty good for us, but they're going to get a huge Ice Fang down. Not for free, though, at this point, because they were getting so much damage against them from these Dragon Breaths and this Aqua Tail. Oh, they actually made a nice catch here on a Cobalion of all things. Who would have thought Cobalion in the Master League? I am kind of weak to fighting type Pokemon with this team, right? I have a Rock type in the lead and Ice type in the back line. With that said, Mud Slap is super effective against them here, so I'm able to go and try to farm them down, maybe shield once, and go for double Breaking Swipes, and potentially try to knock out that KYUREM. With that said, KYUREM has a lot lot of energy, and going down shields against a Kyurem, no matter what form, is always a very scary thing to have to deal with. They go for the charge move here. It will knock us out, but they're pretty low at this point. Can I farm down this Kyurem? If I had Kyurem White, I think that answer would be a yes, but having Kyurem Black using Shadow Claw doing almost nothing to this Pokemon is going to make my life very difficult. With that said, since they don't have very fast energy generation with this Ice Fang, I actually get quite a few Shadow Claws before they can reach a move that will knock us out, and now I have to try our best to Dragon Breath down before the Ice Fang knocks us out, which Palkia is able to do. GG's to our opponents there. Next matchup, going to see a Shadow Rhyperior mirror match actually in the lead. Very cool matchup here. I love my Shadow Rhyperior. It's a very strong Pokemon. It's not a perfect. I think it's like a 15, 14, 12 actually, but it's still basically good enough in a lot of these matchups. In comes a charge move. I'm going to shield up here and see if we can go for a full farm down. Rock Wrecker is going to be thrown. While that is resisted, it does do quite a bit more damage than Breaking Swipe, so they try to get a cheesy knockout on us there, but luckily I saw it coming. I shielded it up, and now I have a Rock Wrecker, although it's going to go into a Dialga, so a resisted charge move. With that said, Rock Wrecker is a very powerful attack, so it still does quite a bit of damage. We see their full team now. They go for a nice Ice Fang snipe down against our Rhyperior before another move will be reached, and now I think our Palkia should be able to shield once, farm this all the way down, but this is such a tough spot to be in. I only have Aqua Tails that I can probably land against them, saying they have 2 shields remaining, so I'm going to just spam out a lot of resisted charge moves if I want any chance of winning this game. Aqua Tail number 1 has been reached. This likely will draw their shield here. They're going to be forced into shielding these bad moves if they don't want to just get farmed down this game. I reach yet another Aqua Tail. They might think I'm at a Spatial Rend. They might just no-shield this. What is going to happen? In comes the move. They do shield, and now, once again, I have to go for another resisted charge attack here, go for a Fusion Bolt with our Kyurem. Is this enough to knock them out? I don't think so, but it should put them into a nice fast move farm down range where we can win this matchup just by going for Shadow Claws and Dragon Breath here. So a ton of resisted moves going to Dialga, just barely able to whittle it down in time to win that match. Alright, next matchup here. This is actually a pretty good lead for us, but we have to keep in mind they do have super effective charging pressure on that Melmetal. They save their Melmetal for the backline potentially. They come in with an Annihilate counter swap, or safe swap rather. I counter swap my Palkia. Let's see what they're going to throw. They do have enough energy for a close combat, which is exactly what they throw, but in Master League, things are just bulky enough to survive these heavy-hitting moves from this Annihilate. In comes an Aqua Tail. Do they shield, or are they fine just letting this go and going for a big farm down with Melmetal? Looks like that is what they're going to do, but Melmetal is such a tricky Pokemon when we have such an energy deficit with our Rhyperior into this, because they have superpower, potentially maybe double Iron Bash. Aqua Tail is not enough to two-shot, and Dragon Breath obviously is resisted here. Luckily, though, I can reach a second one right before getting completely farmed down. Aqua Tail likely will not draw a shield, but if they do let that go, then they're easily in range where Mudslaps will be able to farm them down pretty quickly, but in comes their first charge move. I'm going to shield it up just in case it's a superpower, but they bait us with a double Iron Bash, or maybe they are not running superpower. In comes another charge move, likely another double Iron Bash, but it could be that fighting type charge move. No, just another steel type attack there. Not quite the scariest move in the game. In comes a Kyurem. I didn't quite see what form that is, but I know this Breaking Swipe either way will likely draw a shield. This is actually the easier one here for us to deal with because of the fact that they have very little fast move pressure into us, so if they had Kyurem White, we would be in a very bad spot, but Kyurem Black, actually, we have quite a bit of play into. We get double Breaking Swipes. I don't think either one of those got a debuff against them, but it doesn't really matter. Just getting those shields is all we really need to win this game. Now I can outpace them before they can get to a bait plus a nuke. Just by getting to my free shock here, I can win this game, knock out this Kyurem, and we know from yesterday that one superpower or one double Iron Bash will not be enough to one-shot my Kyurem. They're going to need 2 charge moves, and they're a little bit too low to get all the moves required to win this game. Alright, next matchup here, we're going to see a Shadow Rhyperior up against Palkia in the lead. Pretty good lead matchup. I know that it is a Water-type Pokemon here against a Ground and Rock-type, but we have to keep in mind we are such a spammy Pokemon with these Breaking Swipes, and using the Shadow Rhyperior, you do quite a bit of damage if they opt to let that go. They do shield up that first attack here. I did get an attack drop, which is kind of nice. I tried to catch an Aqua Tail, but our opponent very smartly ends up going for the Overfarm here, meaning they can throw a lot of charges against Palkia. In comes a charge move. I call the Aqua Tail bait, and in comes yet another charge move. At this point, it could be a Spatial Rend, but I'm totally fine just letting this go, getting a shield advantage for my Kyurem Black, and hopefully sweeping the endgame using that Pokemon. It depends, though, what is their final Pokemon, what is their backline going to be? We've only seen their lead so far, so we're really just banking everything right now on the fact that Kyurem Black is a very strong Pokemon that hopefully can sweep endgames. Alright, they do counter swap us with a Landorus before I can swap out here, and at this point, because I did land that Rock Wrecker, they're forced to throw energy before I can get to another Breaking Swipe. I'm just completely committing to a Kyurem sweep at this point, trying to farm this down with Kyurem. We have a lot of energy, we have a shield advantage. What is their final Pokemon? Fortunately for us, it's a Pokemon we have a lot of play into. It's going to be a Ho-Oh, a Pokemon which does not want to take these Fusion Bolts, although I know it's a non-stab Fusion Bolt, and Ho-Oh is actually pretty bulky here in Master League, so I don't think we can one-shot them, unfortunately. In comes a charge move from them. I'm I'm going to try to go for the Free Shock. I didn't know at the time, but Free Shock and Fusion Bolt actually do the exact same damage, so if Fusion Bolt is super effective, definitely the move to go for, but I just wanted to see how much this would do. Unfortunately, our attack did just get debuffed, so it's going to do less than it could otherwise. In comes the Charge Move, doesn't quite knock them out here. We do get the attack debuff against them, but at this point, another Fusion Bolt is going to be reached before their next Charge Move, and we can Shadow Claw down the Palkia and hopefully take the win this game. Fusion Bolt knocks out the Ho-Oh here. We go for the Shadow Claw down against the Palkia, and we get a nice little sweep here with our KYUREM in the back line. Next matchup, we were just talking about how fighting-type Pokemon are a little bit of a nightmare for us to see in the lead, and of course, now Annihilape is on the lead, meaning our Palkia is going to have to put in a lot of work. Our opponent, fortunately for us, is actually staying in this matchup, throwing a Rage Fist instantly, so I would imagine they're going to stay in this matchup for the long haul, and I can just go for Aqua Tails, whittle down this Pokemon, so our backline doesn't quite have to deal with it quite as much. In comes an Aqua Tail. Our opponent is likely going to shield this move up, but if they no-shield, they can survive, saying I did not throw the Spatial Rend, and they do actually no-shield, so a very nice play by them. In comes a Charge Move, going to almost certainly be a Rage Fist coming through. I'm going to shield this up, go for a full farm down, and I know at this point I can survive these counters, go for a Spatial Rend against whatever is going to come in, and hopefully win this game. In comes a Spatial Rend, although I probably should have gone for Aqua Tail against this Rhyperior. Hopefully they did not know that I just instantly clicked the Dragon-type Charge Move. Luckily they do still shield up this attack. I don't want to give them a farm down. I come back in Rhyperior, and they stay in this matchup. In comes a Charge Move that looks like it was a CMP tie on a Breaking Swipe, which means they can potentially get a debuff on us before we're able to get a debuff on them. Breaking Swipe coming through. I don't think our attack got dropped here, which is pretty nice. Breaking Swipe does a decent chunk of damage, but not enough here to knock them out. Unfortunately, that is going to be a very scary Pokemon in the backline. A lot of fast food pressure to be had by this KYUREM White. At this point, these Ice Fangs are going to shred through my HP, and they got quite a decent energy lead here, to the point where I might just lose this matchup straight up by them spamming out Fusion Flares. They also have energy on their Rhyperior, or at least a little bit of HP on that Pokemon, so I need to have a Charge Move to knock them out as well later on. In comes a Free Shock. I think at this point, our opponent could no-shield this because they know Rhyperior could easily close out this endgame, but they do opt to shield, and at this point, by them shielding that nuke and unfortunately not getting this catch-off is going to seal our fate in this game. Ice Fangs doing too much. Fusion Flare is able to knock us out now, and unfortunately, our KYUREM is not able to come out on top at that time. All right, Shadow Rhyperior up against a Melmetal, another pretty good matchup. We've seen this matchup before. It can get a little bit dicey depending on how they want to play it out, but our opponent staying in the lead matchup here is very interesting. They throw after 6 Thunder Shocks, which is absolutely terrible timing, which is very good news for us here. We got a full Mud Slap Sneak, and they did bad timing just to throw a double Iron Bash. At that point, they should have just thrown after 4 if they wanted good timing to throw it instantly. In comes a Charge Move. At this point, I feel like our Rhyperior can shield this up, go for a move if our next Mud Slap isn't enough to knock out, and try our very best to take care of this Pokemon so our KYUREM does not have to see it. In comes the Breaking Swipe. Our opponent shields it up with their Steel-type Pokemon, and we catch a double Iron Bash with our Palkia. We also got the attack drop, so this move is going to do almost nothing. Double Iron Bash is honestly kind of a sad move with how weak it is. Our opponent brings in a Palkia here, and now at this point, I know since I have an energy lead, if they ever throw a move before me, it's going to just be an Aqua Tail, and if they let us get to a move first, then I can either get a shield or a KO on this Palkia. Spatial Rend actually gets a knockout, which is fantastic to see, and in true Master League fashion, we end up seeing a KYUREM White in the back. This is actually the team I ended up running yesterday, so our opponent here is a person of culture. Maybe they watch the channel, maybe they make this, they made the scene themselves. We'll just have to see, though, what ends up happening in this endgame, but I think we're in a pretty good spot here. We draw the shield with that first Breaking Swipe. We go for a second Breaking Swipe. This should either get the knockout or put them into farm down range here, depending on how much it does. Yeah, not quite enough to KO here, but the Shadow Claws should be able to knock them out here, and because KYUREM Black at this point just has to go for a Shadow Claw down against the endgame, it should be able to close out this game. KYUREM Black, once again, not having a lot of play, but because it's able to be carried by both Palkia and Shadow Rhyperior, it's able to finish off this endgame. Shadow Rhyperior in this next game up against a Landorus, honestly a terrible lead. If I had KYUREM White, I'd be able to Ice Fang this down later on if I was able to flip switch advantage, but since our opponent here has a Flourges, that does not look super likely. Flourges, once again, a Pokemon that I did not really account for in team building today. It has Trailblaze now, which does so much damage to Rhyperior. It doesn't quite one-shot, but because it's a boosting Fairy-type Pokemon, and we have nowhere to run against this, it's going to be a very scary matchup later on in this game. I try to call a move here. Luckily, Trailblaze is going to be thrown against us, which does not knock us out, but because they have another Charge Move, likely going to be another Trailblaze, they can survive this next Aqua Tail and then potentially Fairy Wind us down. Aqua Tail coming through. Does our opponent invest a shield into this Flourges, knowing that I have a Rhyperior? No, they do still let that go, and in comes our KYUREM to try to get an energy lead. We end up seeing a KYUREM answer us with our own KYUREM, but this is a KYUREM White using Dragon Breath, so super effective fast food pressure from them. Honestly, super scary stuff here. I don't like seeing that at all. I'm going to try to go for charge move spam with these fusion bolts, just to try to get shields or any sort of chip damage that I can, but they have such a huge energy lead. Honestly, Dragon Breath Kyurem White is such a smart pick right now. It's the Kyurem that beats all other Kyurems. Maybe I need to give it a go myself here in the coming days. In comes the next charge move. Fusion Flare is able to draw a shield, which means they might be able to get to a free shock or a, what's it called? Ice Spirit, I think is what the fire type one has, but I have to just hope at this point that they're not in the move. I can't use my second shield. Our opponent, though, one shots our Rhyperior with the super effective ice type attack, and at that point, that game is over. All right, next matchup here. Okay, I guess we're having to go against this once again. Flourges is not what we want to see here, but our Rhyperior, all things considered, can kind of play this matchup out. So I'm going to stay in the lead and try our best to spam out these charge moves, maybe bait with a Breaking Swipe, try to debuff their attack stat so these Trailblazers don't ramp up too much, and see what we can do. In comes the Breaking Swipe. Do they shield this up, or are they going to call that I'm not going to one-shot them with a Rock Wrecker? Breaking Swipe does get shielded, which is fantastic to see, but no attack drop means that this Flourges is still boosted with their attack stat. In comes a charge move. It could be a Trailblaze bait, but I think I have to shield just in case it's a one-shot. If I would have let a Moonblast go, we'd basically be down 2 Pokemon this game, and I cannot let that happen. Aqua Tail coming through. Our opponent likely will shield this up, knowing I am already so weak to this Flourges. Our opponent does invest here, which is absolutely a nightmare scenario. In goes another charge move. I just have to hope that it is not a Moonblast. It is yet another Trailblaze, actually. Fantastic stuff for us here, but they're at another Trailblaze. This Pokemon is so spammy. Flourges is another Pokemon. Maybe I should try to give a go myself here. It does knock us out, and now this thing's like +3, maybe +4 attack. I don't know what we're going to do here to try to win this game. Kyurem comes in, and these Fairy Winds at this point are so boosted. They are doing so much damage. We try to go for a catch, but our opponent at the exact same time tries to catch on their Ho-Oh. I barely don't reach that Rock Wrecker. If we could have got that move off, we would have one-shot it. Maybe we would have had a chance to win this game, but now I'm forced to throw a ton of energy at this Ho-Oh, and because one of these moves doesn't knock them out here, and these Shadow Claws might not be enough fast pressure to farm them down before their next charge move, I don't think I can win this game. This Sacred Fire does not get an attack drop on us, fortunately, but the Shadow Claw is still not enough to knock out. I have to throw on CMP before that Brave Bird knocks us out here, and because we don't have any energy, that Flourges could come back in here, go for a Moonblast after one Fairy Wind. I'm going to be forced to throw all of my energy. I have no energy in the back line. I think at this point, all I could really beat is like maybe a Kyogre. I don't think anyone runs that, though, anymore in Master League. In comes, who would have thought, a Kyurem here, and they're going to be able to take the endgame, unfortunately, because we have no energy remaining. GG's to our opponent there. Next matchup, another Rhyperior into Rhyperior matchup, but they are using the non-Shadow, which means this matchup is not quite as quick as the Shadow into Shadow. With that said, we can see that I am going to be able to throw first. I go for the Rock Wrecker, knowing that it does do just a bit more raw damage, and our opponent might let this go. They might shield it. They do let it go, meaning they're like 1 or 2 Mud Slaps away from getting knocked out. What move are they going to throw here? In comes a Breaking Swipe. We survived that pretty easily. In comes a Kyurem from our opponent, but luckily Palkia is one of the best counter swaps in the entire game to this Pokemon. Because they have Fusion Flare, I know I can shield this up, and it takes 8 for them to get to that. They're not going to get to a second move before I can get a full Dragon Breath down. This will set up my Palkia quite nicely into the endgame, and as long as they don't have a hard wall for our energy, we should be in a pretty good spot. They're waiting for just a second. What do they bring in? They still have a bit of HP left over on that Rhyperior. We have not seen the third Pokemon. Well, I guess now we have. Of course, it's a Flourges, a Pokemon which is going to be so tricky to take out here. Aqua Tail being thrown, our opponent is going to let it go, and at this point, I just have to spam out as many charge moves as I can. I need to get shields down this game so I can go for a Fusion Bolt, maybe just Shadow Claw down as well if they let enough of these charge moves go. In comes a shield from our opponent here, which is very good for us to see, but I'm going to be able to reach another Aqua Tail, but they are so loaded on energy on this Flourges. This endgame is going to be a very tricky matchup. With that said, they actually ended up shielding that second Aqua Tail here, meaning that we should be in a very good spot to just shield up this move, go for a Fusion Bolt, and as long as no catch ends up happening, we should be able to win this game. Our opponent does try to make a catch here, but we wait properly. We are able to farm down this Rhyperior as long as this is not a Rock Wrecker, but I know they didn't have enough energy to reach it. It's just going to be a Breaking Swipe. We survived that move. We have a Free Shock ready to go against that Flourges. Our opponent realizes that. They end up top lefting. Next matchup, a fantastic lead for our Shadow Rhyperior. Mud Slap is such a strong move that in this matchup, all you need to do is shield a single time and tap your screen. You don't need to throw a single charge move. You get out of this matchup with so much energy, and if they stay in it and give you that full farm down, this is just kind of a criminal matchup with how good it is. With that said, our opponent actually, for some reason, comes in with a Palkia after taking super effective Mud Slap on Dialga. They want to catch my super effective damage on Palkia with these Breaking Swipes, so that's fine by me here. I'm going to go for another Breaking Swipe. Let's see what our opponent's going to do. They do shield up that second one, which is totally fine. I get a debuff, and because they will get a Spatial Rend, they don't get a Spatial Rend. They died with the move, which is even better for us. We get a full farm down. What do they have in the back? Dialga is so low at this point that they would get knocked out by just a single Aqua Tail plus the Dragon Breath damage. It's a Ho-Oh of all things. We have so much energy. There is nothing they can do at this point. Aqua Tail does get a shield our opponent, finally realizing that is not a winnable matchup. All right, next game here. Another one of these Dialga leads. Love to see it. Let's see what our opponent is going to do. This time, though, they do instantly swap out to a Dragon Breath KYUREM White. We've seen a lot of KYUREM Whites, mostly on Ice Fang, but Dragon Breath is actually so much better here for our Rhyperior. Breaking Swipe does a ton of damage, but because they will get to an Ice Burn, that is, before I can farm them down, I will have to go down shields, so shield advantage is going to go to our opponent. Ice Burn does come through. We get debuffed. I think that's a defense drop, yeah, unfortunately, but honestly, maybe that's a good thing. Now we're going to give them a little bit less farm here on their Dialga, which means this Spatial Rend will get a shield or just get a massive amount of damage if they let it go, and we should be able to hopefully win this game just by spamming out Charges with our Shadow Rhyperior. With that said, we have no idea what their final Pokemon is going to be, so it could be a little bit of a tricky endgame depending on what that last Pokemon will be. In terms of charge move, I will shield this up. Iron Head would do a catastrophic amount of damage, saying we are still a rock type, a shadow Pokemon as well. And oh, that's a very tricky Pokemon to see here. It is a Landorus. I go for a Breaking Swipe bait. We were not even at the rock wrecker. Our opponent doesn't need to know that. I'm not going to tell them if you don't. They end up shielding up that move, and we get an attack drop, which I think at this point might honestly be kind of a bad thing. I don't want to give that Dialga any extra energy here. So by getting that debuff, it's going to mean the Stone Edge doesn't put us deep into the red. That Dialga is going to get a huge farm down. At this point, I'm going to go for a full undercharge of this free shock. I don't want this to knock out. We CMP'd on a Sandsear Storm here, so if they survive, which they do on 1 HP, they're going to get a ton of damage, maybe knock us out, maybe they'll undercharge as well to try to get more farm on their Dialga. In comes the charge move. Our opponent is taking a second here to land this move. In comes the Sandsear Storm. Dialga will come back in. They get a few Dragon Breaths, but is this enough energy here to reach the Iron Head before my Breaking Swipe? No, it is not. So tactically taking as much damage as we could on KYUREM. Getting that undercharge was massive. We are able to outpace just barely to this Breaking Swipe, knock out the Dialga, mud slap down the Landorus, barely closing out that endgame there. GG's to our opponent. All right, next game here, we're going to see another one of these KYUREM Whites. I don't like this Pokemon on the lead. We safe swap our Palkia and unfortunately are met by a Dialga. This matchup is so bad if the Dialga has a Best Buddy active. It gets 1 extra Dragon Breath damage against our Palkia. I'm trying to work on our Palkia Best Buddy now so I don't have to worry about this matchup as much later on. And they get a full Dragon Breath down, which is catastrophic. They have so much energy here. They have Switch advantage, which means we're going to lose both Switch and Shield advantage if we want to do anything in this game. We shield up this move. At this point, I need to keep some HP somewhere, but this is looking so bad. Roar of Time does draw a shield. In comes that KYUREM White, and we're going to try to throw a Breaking Swipe to draw a shield from them. At least try to even out these shields. Maybe set up our KYUREM in the backline, but this opposing KYUREM is looking so tricky to try to take down. In comes another Breaking Swipe in just a second, but our opponent is very smart. They know to throw the move right before my next Breaking Swipe, so they don't go down shields. Ice Burn does get shielded up, so it's a huge move that our opponent decided to throw against us. In comes another Breaking Swipe. This should draw a shield or come close to knocking out. We do get the shield. If in the backline our KYUREM has play, we might win this game. Shadow Machamp, I don't know about this. I don't think we one-shot with a Fusion Bolt, and I would expect them right now to be running the charge move Dynamic Punch. It is only 5 Karate Chops now to it, and that is 5 Karate Chops. Do we get one-shot by this move? I'm almost certain that we do. Yeah. Losing to a Shadow Machamp, that is a little bit embarrassing here, but I mean, honestly, our team is weak to fighting type Pokemon, so I guess it was bound to happen if someone was running the Machamp. Very unlikely that we could beat it. All right, next matchup here, a Palkia, another one of these water type into our ground and rock type matchups, where our ground and rock type actually has quite a bit of play. In comes our first Breaking Swipe. Our opponent likely will shield up this move. That seems to be what most Palkia end up doing. Well, I guess this one ends up not doing that. We get an attack drop, which is very nice to see, but I would expect them to go for this shield and then potentially swap out. Aqua Tail does draw a shield. Our opponent, though, does not swap out. They give us a huge farm down with these mud slaps, so we have a lot of energy to throw against whatever is going to come in, but it's going to be a Rhyperior Pokemon, which we don't have a hard answer to. If we had KYUREM White, that Pokemon would have access to Ice Fang, which would be super effective and do quite a bit of damage to them here, but because we have a Palkia and a KYUREM Black, it means that this energy is going to go quite a ways against our backline, and we have no real way to take this thing off the board anytime soon. In comes a move. We did, I think, get an attack drop with the Breaking Swipe here, but that Rock Wrecker, maybe I didn't. That does so much damage to us. I'm going to go for this Aqua Tail, knock out this Pokemon. If they let this go, and if our KYUREM has play in the backline, we might still have a chance to win this one. Aqua Tail does knock them out, but our opponent has another hard answer here to our KYUREM in the back. This Dialga is a matchup that we are never going to be able to win. We're going to try to bait a Fusion Bolt. I don't think there's ever a chance, though, even in the one-shield matchup, they can bait a Fusion Bolt and reach a free shock. If we can, then we would be able to knock out, but we're not able to get there. I get farmed down 1 Shadow Claw away from the move, and this Dialga able to sweep the backline. So once again, our KYUREM White just being a little bit too clunky to close out that endgame. Another Rhyperior. It seems like today is the day of Rhyperiors. People remember this Pokemon existed, and they are all using them. In comes a Charge Move. It could be a Breaking Swipe. Honestly, that's probably what it is, right? They didn't throw after 5, which could have been a Surf. I guess 4 could be a Superpower. I might need to keep that in mind, but our opponent luckily just goes for the Breaking Swipe. In comes our own Breaking Swipe, which will do quite a bit of damage to them, and we will be able to CMP on the next one here. Our opponent ends up losing CMP, meaning that we get to knock them out, potentially winning us Switch advantage or getting us Shield advantage. In comes the Charge Move. Our opponent does let that go, and I guess we get to see a KYUREM White, which is a Pokemon that having Switch advantage is going to be crucial for in the backline. With that said, we've seen that our KYUREM Black, honestly, even with Switch, is not that useful, right? If you're not up energy, it's a Pokemon that gets outpaced pretty easily, farmed down by a lot of dragons, so if there's a dragon type in the back like a Dialga or a Palkia, this endgame could be a little bit dicey. With that said, they gave us a ton of energy on our own Palkia, so if I can draw both shields from this matchup, there could be a good chance that we could still win this game. In comes the first shield with an Aqua Tail Bait, in comes the second shield likely with the Spatial Rend, and if we do get the shield here, then I can just go for a Fusion Bolt, or just knock him out, I guess. That works too. So now I just Shadow Claw down, and if we don't quite get the full Shadow Claw down, I can go for a Dragon Breath down with our Palkia, and this game should be ours. In comes a Charge Move. It is likely going to be the Fusion Flare, and we can shield that up, go for another Shadow Claw, and it knocks out the opposing KYUREM. GG's to our opponent. Next matchup, you're going to see a Landorus in the lead. Once again, this Pokemon is such a tricky Pokemon to see here, but our Palkia is one of the best safe swaps in the entire meta right now. They might go for a Chip and Dip with the Sandsear Storm, but fortunately for us, they don't, and they're a little bit slow on the swap, answering with a Tapu Lele. This Pokemon is a Fairy-type Pokemon, but it's not exactly the most fairy of fairies out there, right? They're using a Ghost-type fast move with Astonish, which doesn't do all that much damage to us, and it is also going to be throwing Nature's Madness, which is a pretty expensive charge move. That is their cheapest move as well, so I think the longer we're in this matchup, the better it is for Palkia. Dragon Breath has put them into range where 2 Aqua Tails will be enough to knock them out. We are at back-to-back Aqua Tails, and we will win CMP against them, which will give us either Switch or Shield advantage in this game. At this point, I would love to see them shield this. I want to let our Palkia go, get a nasty farm down with our KYUREM Black, and try to get an endgame sweep here with this Pokemon. KYUREM Black is a hard Pokemon to make work, but because this thing is so good up shields and up energy, and if you have both, it's just kind of a nightmare to deal with, you're going to be able to potentially win this endgame. In comes a Free Shock. This does not one-shot a Palkia. They likely do get the Aqua Tail off, but they will never get anything else. In comes the Charge Move on CMP. We actually got an attack drop as well, so Aqua Tail is going to do even less damage than our opponent would like it to do. Aqua Tail does almost nothing to us right now, and we know there is still that Landorus in the backline, but we have Free Shock, we have a shield advantage, we even have a Rhyperior, which, while that's not a great matchup, with enough fast move pressure, we could knock them out here with a Rock Wrecker. In comes that Landorus, and likely a Sandsear Storm being thrown. We're going to shield this up as soon as we can, try to land the super effective Ice-type attack, and if we can land the Free Shock, it would probably knock out an entire family of Landorus. In comes the Ice-type move. I did not see a catch there. This should be enough to one-shot this Pokemon, and we get a nice little KYUREM Black sweep here to end the night. So while we were able to get a nice sweep, it is a very hard Pokemon to honestly make work. If you are a smart player in Master League right now, you know, don't go down shields, right? If you go down shields, likely you're going to get swept by this Pokemon. KYUREM White is so much more consistent, it has a lot more fast move pressure, and its charge moves are just as strong as KYUREM Black. And because it has Stab Ice Fang, it just feels so much more impactful. I don't know, KYUREM Black really disappointed me today. I did go 13-12 with this team, so I did get a little bit of a climb, but it wasn't anywhere near as fun, anywhere near as strong, in my opinion, as KYUREM White was. So if you can only build one, in my opinion, just build the KYUREM White. I think that is the best one to use. KYUREM Black, it could be fun in certain teams, but KYUREM White is just so much more consistent. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the battles and you want to see more content like this in the future, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. But thank you again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.